And Shalom and Salam to again, your brother Yohannes, Wolde, Amanuel, RastafariRenaissance.com, and hopefully ones and ones are enjoying this here interview. Some critical and vital information here about the Commandment Keepers congregation that was, of course, centrally located in Harlem, New York, or Manhattan, New York, here in the United States of A. And a very interesting interview, of course, coming from Chief Rabbi Capers Funnye Jr. here interviewing the elder, very blessed individual, and we are blessed, just to even get a recording here of him recounting his time spent, of course, here in the West, of course, before immigrating from Ethiopia amongst the Beth Israel during the time of the fascist Italian invasion of Ethiopia. So very interesting indeed for ones to get, a first account recording here of the brother just speaking on his experiences and his knowledge, still vast amongst much of whom we, of course, see as our great elders and our great foundation layers, of course, for this, of course, lineage here. So hopefully ones and ones are continuing to enjoy this one. And here we are entering into a part 2 session with Rabbi Capers Funnye Jr. here with our great elder, Rabbi Paris. So hopefully ones will continue to enjoy this, and we'll move on here to part 2. Shalom.
You would come here
and visit you.
Yes, it's recording.
Huh? Oh, okay.
He's part of this. And we, they tend to know each other.
Right, right.
So that's interesting. So you, so anyway, the Moroccan community has done a lot, and on an international level, to the point where they had Ethiopians working in the butcher shops and restaurants and all that, Canada and all that. They've done a lot to integrate, more than the Ashkenazis.
Right.
They don't how they do. They don't hire anybody.
Right.
They don't get involved with money when it comes to black Jews.
Right. Yeah. But the money is a different thing. There's no real movement or real interest that I've seen in the development of Judaism in sub-Saharan Africa, which I think is extremely unfortunate.
Uganda?
Oh yes. Still very much in touch with Uganda and Rabbi Gershom. Whenever Gershom comes in the Midwest, he stays with us, and he still is in touch with Diane Tobin at the Coalition.
She's doing all right.
Thank God she's doing okay. She had a couple of health challenges, but she's doing much better. But I wanted you to kind of give us some more background in the history of the community, particularly going back to the 40s and 50s as the community. I mean, I believe that Commandment Keepers there were other congregations around, but Rabbi Matthew, his congregation, I think, was by and large the one that embraced, taught, and lived totally Jewish.
Yeah, they transformed compared to the other Hebrew Israelites. They became more Jewish.
Okay.
In over the years, and they also had some kind of a relationship with the Jewish community on a small level compared to the ones in Brooklyn. And they what made him more outstanding is because of his connection to the Ethiopian history. You see, the other Hebrew Israelites, those from Philadelphia, I remember the ones from Philadelphia.
Cherry or something like that.
Yeah, Cherry. They were Israelites, but they didn't have the Ethiopian people.
Right.
They didn't work it from that end.
Right.
They worked it from prophecy, basic prophecy.
Right.
So there was that difference. Then you had those from Philly. What's his name that passed away with the family? The one that went to Jersey. I'm forgetting his name. The rabbi that
Oh, Respis.
Respis, yeah.
Yes.
Respis was one of the giants of Philly, and he came over to make a union with Rabbi Matthews' membership and all that. It never got off ground.
Why?
Because this, I think part of it is because of the ideological bent. Matthews was bent on Ethiopia, and Respis was part of the old tradition that still exists, you know.
And which old
Like
tradition?
Bethel and the Bethel tradition.
Okay.
And cause we used to go to Philly. We know the Philadelphia community in the old days. But the same thing happened to Philly, Chicago, New York. Over the years, things either people got really Jewish or they just seemed to disappear.
Okay.
One way or the other.
Right.
That's what it seemed to be. Oh, many of them went to Israel too. Now, one of the things that the New York Times wrote out with the Gonzalez family from Cuba, they talked about the fact that there was a Jewish philanthropist that raised $200,000 to send the 56 Cubans to the Maccabean. See, that's substantial money.
Yes.
Yeah, they're serious when it gets to that kind of money.
That means that we're serious about this work.
Yeah, and they wanted the people to know there were Jews in Cuba and all of that. Now, the reason why I brought that up is because I go back to the days when the Maccabees had two of our kids to go and perform, but it never got off the ground.
Right, okay.
You know, in the same way.
Right.
Never got off the ground.
Right.
And the most they could do is get somebody to do some converting in order to satisfy the Jewishness of the youth.
Right.
One was the Poinset's son, Shemuel, and the other one was Grandison's son.
Okay.
They both were performers in the Maccabean games in the old days, in the 50s.
In the 50s.
Yeah.
So I didn't know that the Rabbi Poinset's son was that old. So how old is Shmuel?
Well, Shmuel is, he should be in his 40s and all that.
Okay. In his 40s?
Yeah.
Okay.
They must be.
Okay. So now, Rabbi, let's go deal with your education a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Please give us your educational background so we will have it for the record.
Right, okay. Well, to make it easy. When I came to America, I settled in Harlem. And the community in Harlem was the community I settled with was basically Caribbean. And I, as everybody else, we all went to school. Went to 139 was in walking distance of where I lived. I went for 6 years. I went to elementary school, which was 2 blocks away, and then I went to the junior high school, and then graduated and then went to the Bronx I'm forgetting the name. Yeah, it's the Bronx High School. It's still the Marshall Parkway, and I graduated from there, and then went to City College. And then when I was at City, I wasn't really on top of the intellectual material as one should be, because that days City College was the #1 community college in America. I mean, it was #1 among city colleges where you didn't have to pay if you had the right marks.
Right.
So I didn't make it easy there, and one of the teachers there used to substitute for my Hebrew teacher. When she didn't come in, he used to come and substitute for me. And to him, he was telling me about the Yeshiva. He said, you ought to go over to the university in Manhattan. He started engineering the idea, and eventually took me. And I got to Yeshiva. It's really August would be the 60th year that myself, Kenneth Brown, and Rabbi Brooks all entered Yeshiva University 60 years ago.
60 years ago in August, you entered Yeshiva University. This September.
Yeah.
And so you entered Yeshiva as in the undergraduate program?
Yeah, the undergraduate. I was an undergraduate. They were in the Cantoria.
Okay.
They were in the Cantoria program. But I was
Cantoria.
Yeah, Cantoria.
So Rabbi Brooks and
Cantor Brown.
and Cantor Brown were in Yeshiva University.
Orthodox
The cantorial program.
That's
Okay. So they had both went through Orthodox conversion?
no, nobody with that.
Okay.
But Brooks, it took years, I said 30, 40 years afterwards. Well, it took us time to feel comfortable being Jewish.
Right. Right.
You know, that's the problem.
But let's go back.
When I went to yeshiva, I was still a Harlemite.
Right.
You understand?
Right.
My whole, outside of the Ethiopian thing,
Right.
I was still in the black world.
Right.
But if you stay long enough,
It kind of get absorbed.
yes.
So what year was this? Do you remember the year that you first went to yeshiva?
Yeah, 60 years ago.
60 years ago. So that's when you enrolled in yeshiva, and now do you,
1953. What's this?
Yes.
2050?
Yes.
Yeah, 1953.
so you made your, what was your major?
Hebrew studies.
So you majored in Hebrew studies, and so you have you acquired an undergraduate degree from Yeshiva University.
Right, in Hebrews.
So it would probably call it Hebrew literature,
Yeah, and then I graduated in Jewish studies.
and then you had a master's degree
In Jewish studies.
in Jewish studies from Yeshiva University.
Right.
So you studied Talmud.
Oh, yeah, the whole business.
But I'm for the
Yeah,
record,
right, yeah.
the people that will watch this that don't know,
They may not know.
so I want it to be very, very clear.
You break it down.
That-
know
that
what
you
the
studied
study was.
Talmud,
Midrash,
Midrash,
Mishnah,
Mishnah,
Biblical
Biblical Hebrew,
Biblical Hebrew,
Kabbalah,
Aramaic, you know.
Aramaic. So you, in fact, became adept at all of what we call rabbinic Judaism.
Right.
But when you finished at yeshiva with your masters, you were not in the rabbinic program.
No, well, nobody, the Jews didn't make their mind up yet. The Ashkenazis still have to make their mind up, actually.
Right.
It's just part of the world that made the difference. They have an ordained, the only Ashkenazi, because I worked at the Jewish Theological Seminary also.
You
for a
worked
while.
at Jewish Theology?
Yeah,
Where did you do that?
in the library.
You worked in their library?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was also a bookseller also
Okay.
for a short while. The only Ashkenaz community that did convert an Ethiopian Jew was the conservative movement in Israel.
Right.
I forgot what's the special name. The name called Mizrach, not Mizrach.
That's it.
Mizkar.
Oh yeah.
Mirkaz.
No. The conservative movement. I know.
Yeah.
I'll know. I'll put it in there. I'll come up with it. But so now, Rabbi, now what about this young man Israel Francis? There was African American, or maybe he's from the Caribbean.
He
came up under.
Yeah, his parents were from the Caribbean.
Okay.
And he told everybody that he was a Sephardic Caribbean.
Yes.
The Caribbean. And he also was a member, in his youth, he was a member in the Bronx.
Okay.
And like everybody else, he moved to Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
Those who wanted to get Jewish moved to Brooklyn, he moved to Brooklyn. And well, at first he was with the Sephardic community in the Bronx, then he moved to Brooklyn.
But here's what I don't understand. Why does getting with the community mean leaving a different space? In other words, why isn't there the synthesis of your Africanness, or his Africanness, and their Jewishness? Why is it that you have to disown, and totally deny any relationship
Previous.
with Africa to be a part of
The Jewish.
this Jewish thing? Why isn't it synthesized? Why is it either or? And that's, for me, it's a synthesis.
Right.
It's a synthesis.
Well, actually, it should go the other way around. The Jewishness is in Africa from the beginning.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
you don't start in Eastern Europe.
It doesn't
Because
start there.
it didn't begin in Eastern Europe.
Right. So that's why I say that you cannot give. You cannot give.
What happened?
No, he wants you down. She wants you to kind of look at the camera more.
Oh,
You cannot give this whole sense of. You cannot give this sense of making you who you are to someone else. Because if they say that you are not, then what are you? And if you that you're simply waiting for them to say, "Oh yeah," well, it may be too late. All the money could be gone.
right. Bank is
Big piece of chicken, everything could be gone, and you have nothing left. So that's why we have to really have, I think, and that was exactly my darasha at Congregation Temple Beth this past Shabbat, and unifying ourselves to do, because I also talked about our inability to have provide for our seniors.
Yeah, oh yeah. We've been talking about that for about 50 years.
50 years, but we haven't done it. And now you need it.
Now the one building that Rabbi Matthews got, that's a problem.
Yes.
That never.
It never materialized.
Yeah, they can't sell it, and it's all tied up in legalities.
Yeah, and so it's still tied up.
Oh yeah, it may be tied up forever.
Forever. just
No, because Jews don't give things without it being a problem.
right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Anytime that building, Matthews gave him $50,000. Something's wrong with that. That building, even in the 1920s, was more than $50,000. Much less now.
Right.
You know, something had to be wrong with it. They wanted it off their hands.
Right.
They didn't want to get rid of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So now it's creepy. You know, the record is always there. Somebody's always digging a record.
Right.
So we see how I think the sister told you, that's what you told me, that you wouldn't have spoken at Newark, at the synagogue in Newark, if you knew what I told you.
What I later learned,
yeah.
I would have just said no. I would not have ingratiated myself because I had no idea of the trickery that had gone on with that.
That's one way to put it. But the trickery it hasn't done what it's supposed to do.
Well, see, the trickster cannot trick God. So when you get finished with it, Hashem is still in charge of that.
He's still the boss.
And so you may try what you want, but it will not. It just will not happen. So, do you ever talk to Rabbi Matthew's grandson, Rabbi David?
No, I see. We have a good point. We've done funeral services for the membership of the old membership that I grew up with and knew, and he knows and I know them, his mother and everything. So he Samuel's sisters have me come over when his sisters passed away and everything. So we're in good terms. I don't think he's too happy with Rabbi Shalom, or with the others. I'm in the exception because I come out of a different world. So I don't have trouble with him, and I know how to walk the walk.
Right.
So I don't get in trouble. They're not gonna put me in a trap.
Right.
That's why I was glad you told me that, because I started thinking. I said, the rabbi man had a point. And then what happened? What you reminded me is that the other day one of the Pointer's son gave me the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal had an article on the building. Now, if you get the Wall Street Journal having
and the building we're talking about was the flagship building for the Black Jewish community in the United States.
Right.
The building at 1 West 123rd Street,
right,
which was our headquarters. It was the house that Chief Rabbi Wentworth A. Matthews built. It was a world famous building. Its pictures and its worship
it's so famous
services.
that on the subway maps of New York they have the Ethiopian temple.
Ethiopian temple on the subway maps, and now it's gone.
Now it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist anymore. And I think that I do agree with Rabbi Shlomo that did hurt. If in fact they did want to do what they did, they could have said, we're going to be out. Does anybody else in the community want to come in and buy? Okay.
But then you see, one of the things Rabbi Shlomo said, which is true because it's logical, because of my background where I came from, he said to the small group, he said, Rabbi should really be the inheritor of this, inherit the seat. Not to own the building, but inherit the seat. But that wouldn't go with the grandchildren of Rabbi Matthews.
Okay.
I mean, they may love me because their mother was my teacher, but if I step over, I know where to step. That building is grandson's building.
Right.
And he tells people, he says, does the Pope sell the Vatican?
Pope can't sell that.
And you can't sell this. He's serious. Now, if you want a lot of hate, you could create some hate for yourself.
Right.
If you go against the family,
Right.
So I know, I
Well,
people.
all I can tell you is this: when I met him at, I think, Chief Rabbi Levy's funeral, I believe he was there.
He came in Queens. You told me.
Wherever it was, wherever.
Oh, he was
Levi
there.
Ben Levy's. Well, I met him once at a funeral, somebody's funeral. It was a funeral
Right.
that I met him at, and I don't remember whose funeral it was. I thought it was Chief Rabbi Levy's funeral. But when I met him, and he gave me his number, I gave him my number. When I called him and started talking to him, and I mentioned something about Rabbi Yohannes, and at the time Rabbi Yohannes was at Commandment Keepers. And so he said if I was Rabbi Yohannes' friend, there would be no way that I could be his friend. And I asked him why. He said, well, it's because that's your friend with him. And I said, that makes no sense to me. How can you ever make peace if the people that associate with you can never associate or be associated with people that you're not speaking to? That just didn't make sense. And I said, okay, thank you, and that was it. So I really haven't spoken or attempted to speak to him again.
Yeah, well, I knew that if you want to get in the blacklist, you start talking about you want to be rabbi of
Commandment
keepers, and you're in trouble, man. They get yourself an army or something.
Okay.
The Secret Service wouldn't be good enough.
No, but they could not bring you in, huh? They would do and it's done we need to right the ship in the black Jewish community, just not only in the city of New York, but around the country. The ship isn't right. We do not, and we have not done the things that we ought to have done. We do not have a place, youth campus in our children. We do not have a day school. We do not, now we don't have any place for our aged.
Yeah.
There is no central location, there is no federation.
That's one of the things that Brooks would think when he used to come back. He never really left Commandment Keepers while he was with
Who was this?
and Brother Synagogue.
Who?
Robert Brooks.
Okay,
When he was working with the Ashkenazi.
yes.
He always came back home, He always had this thing about, well, I started off Commandment Keepers.
Right,
He never put Commandment Keepers down
Right.
while he was elevating himself in the Jewish world.
right.
So he used to come back, and then he said it, what you just said, he said the program where Jews would come out of Ohio and all these places.
Right.
And they would come to New York, and they would come to Commandment Keepers.
Right.
Yeah, it all worked out.
Yes. But we don't have that.
Yeah.
And I think that the generation that I'm one of the seniors of now, we would be remiss if we don't accomplish something. So I said to Rabbi Shalom and Rabbi Baruch when I met with them Saturday night, and with Deborah Bowen, that we need a seniors place, and that we were going to that they should be done in each one of the communities.
Oh, each town should have its own.
Philadelphia.
Each one should have.
But then we can do something about getting together some type of camp, maybe even using the karate location down in Virginia. You get our kids into some type of summer program, bringing them in from all over the country, where they can have education in the outdoor and meet each other, and say, and develop those relationships. Going to Israel through birthright is fine, but it's the probability of some relationship blossoming between people in our community and the Ashkenazi community, I think is 0 and none. And the parents of the the Ashkenazi Jew would much rather than marry a black atheist than a black Jew. Just plain and simple. But so, Rabbi, give us a little bit more of the history. So many of our people were part of the Garvey movement. It was a very important. It was a very important part of their lives. Why?
No, well, I'm told that Garvey, one of his prophecies was that a king would come out of Africa, and that is why he focused on the redemption of the Afro-American. He said, Asia is for the Asians and Europe for the Europeans, Africa for the Africans. That was his motto.
Right.
You know, he kept that going. And that's it. Well, as he kept that going, you had Dr. Du Bois going the other way with integration. So that you got the community divided between the two.
Right.
The division never really you got. The division went on and on and on to the point that Garvey was in many ways justified in his prophecy that Africa is for the African. Du Bois thought that education would make the European different. If he understood our history, that he would do away with the apartheid system that they call Jim Crow. You know what I mean?
Right.
But that never really happened, and it still didn't happen. It still isn't gone.
Right.
It still got this hang up. White people still got this hang up. So anyway, while the focus was on integrating in America, there were those who said, no, we're going to go back to Africa, because even if you're integrated in America, it doesn't stop you from being what you are.
Right.
You know? So, and there was a lot of people in the Hebrew community, like as in the black world in the early part of the last century, who were not Africanists. They sort of rejected their historical background because of the whole racism.
Right. Right.
So Garvey wasn't liked by everybody, but he was liked. The mass of black people understood that he was talking the truth. That we're African, we can't get right from that.
Right.
Regardless of how the Africans act.
Right.
You know. So his dream, in a sense, maintained itself. What gave it body was that Haile Selassie was ordained in 1930. I mean, he was inaugurated as king of Ethiopia, king of kings, who came from the line of Judah.
Right.
That solidified the whole thing in the minds of black people who was thinking about Africa being the home of the African and the home of the world.
Yes.
And that galvanized the Ethiopian, the Africans Afro-Americans who gave to Ethiopia at the time. So Garvey did his thing when he was here. He did his thing. One of the stories that I like to tell is that Garvey's wife was Amy Jacks. And well, you know it now because you have experience with the Africans. The Africans are problematic. I put it that way. But because, and it's not that Nigeria is any different than Ethiopians. They're all the same. I mean, when it comes to dealing with Afro-Americans, it's the same thing, same hang-up. So Garvey, instead of the Nigerian taking this idol, the icon of the black world, and lifting him up, and his wife making it home in Nigeria, she has to come back to Jamaica.
Really?
She came back to die in Jamaica.
Wow.
You know, the Africans never took her or him in the real sense of the word.
Right.
Never did. And she, because of the years they grew up, the Bastions and the Parises and Rabbi Ford, the years they put in with Garvey, the